My name is Chandru Arur. For those of you who don't know me, I live in Plano, Texas. We've been living in this house for about 14 years here. My wife is Malati. She runs the Healthy Indian blog, and probably most of you either know her through the blog or through her Veggie 101 group. We have a puppy, Chutney, who lives with us. Basically, I have always been, both of us, been very passionate about sustainability. And you can see from our previous topics, especially Malti's, that's what we focus on. So before we get started, here are some house rules. So we make sure that this goes on track, everybody is on time, we get your questions answered. So what we'll do is, we have two segments to this. The first one, I will be talking about rainwater harvesting. The second session is about composting, which Malati will talk about. So we will walk through the presentations. If you have any questions, either write them down and save it for the end, or feel free to type it in the chat window of Zoom. And we'll get to those questions once we have walked through the presentation and talked through it. Then please don't unmute yourself during the session because there'll be background noise that comes in. So we want to make sure that everybody can hear this and participate fully. So don't unmute yourself till we get to the Q&A. We will have two Q&A sessions, one right after my rainwater harvesting and the second one after composting. So there'll be two Q&As for each of these segments. Some background, how did I get into rainwater harvesting and what's my interest here? I got into it about 10 years back. For those of you who have lived in Texas long enough, you know we went through a very severe drought. In fact, when we moved in here from the Midwest, we were allowed to water daily our lawns. And in Texas, after the drought, they switched it to twice a day. So that's when we started looking into how can we save some water? How can we recapture the rainwater that rains and flows away, whatever little rain that comes. At that point, because of the drought, the city of Plano started a program where they held workshops in which you could create your own rain barrel and take it home. You pay, I think, $75 or something. So the class and the rain barrel. And that's how I started. I started with one rain barrel and now I have 5. For those of you who came in late, really quick, my name is Chandru Arur. I'll be walking through the rainwater harvesting segment. All right, so let's get started here. So what are some of the benefits? Why do we need to get into rainwater harvesting? Well, obviously, one of the biggest reasons is that water is free. Rainwater is free. It pours down, you capture it, you use it, right? So it will lessen your bill when it comes to using the water either for irrigating your lawn if you don't have a garden, or use it for your kitchen garden or to fill your pool. So it saves you money. It's good for the environment too, because this is what happens with rainwater. Everybody thinks when it rains, it's so good. Why are we talking about trying to capture it before it gets to the streams and rivers? We need it there. The reason is this: water in an urban area, in a forest, that's great, no pollution. What happens in the urban area? You have lawns that have fertilizers. So the water that goes through your lawn, gets to the bedrock, is polluted. There is oil on your driveway, there's oil on street, that gets... Chinu, can you mute people, please?
Welcome to Zoom. Enter your meeting ID followed by pound.
Sorry about that. I think we took care of that situation. So back to rainwater and why it gets polluted. So those are the reasons. And obviously, if you lived, we heard of floods. The more water you capture, the less places get flooded. You might wonder, how much is a barrel going to make a difference? Well, it's not about one barrel. If everyone started adopting this, and this similarity I'll talk about is solar roofs. You almost see it every other house these days, right? 10 years ago, hardly any have it. So hopefully this will become a moment and everybody can start getting into rainwater harvesting. And just to give you an idea, if you have a 1,000 square foot roof, 1 inch of rain, and just this last week, we got about 1.5 inches of rain, is 600 gallons of water. So just think about that. So with my 5 barrels, do the math. On to the next one. So let's walk through why rainwater is better. Municipal water that you get through your tap has chemicals. So obviously, the most obvious chemical there is chlorine. The other things that come, I mean, have you seen your bathroom pipes turn white? That's because there's calcium deposits in it. Whereas rainwater, that's actually water that's evaporated, comes back to you, is purer. Then rainwater is acidic, which your plants like, as opposed to tap water, which is alkaline. So there's a second advantage. And I didn't know this honestly till I started preparing for this slide. At 78% of the atmosphere is nitrogen. And nitrogen, everybody knows, is what makes your plants greener. It's good for plants, good for trees. So you wonder why then do we need to put it as fertilizer? That's because naturally available nitrogen is not absorbed by plants that easily. And lightning and thunderstorms is what breaks the atmospheric nitrogen into a form plants can use. So when it rains, along with thunderstorms especially, you have nitrogen in that water. Right, so let's actually now get to it and see how we want to install a rain barrel. So before I get there, typically the rain barrels, there are two categories. They are repurposed food grade barrels. So these are not rain barrels yet, these are just food grade barrels, 55 to 60 gallons in volume. That's used by bulk manufacturers. So these, once they use it, think of ketchup. They're shipped in 60-gallon barrels, goes to a distribution center or manufacturing or center, gets put into bottles, and then the barrel is empty. So those are the ones you should use. Stay away from barrels that have had chemicals. So, and people who sell barrels, they'll tell you it's food grade. Use that. So the barrel, when you get it first, if it is not prepped for you, like at a workshop or a commercial place, there is some work to do. You have to cut out the top, you have to add a tap, you have to add an outlet hole at the top, and I'll kind of quickly walk through this. But for this part of the presentation, I'm going to presume you have a barrel that's ready to go. All you need to do is hook it up to your water system, which in this case is the downspout. So if you look at the first little picture here, there is this downspout connected through some flexible hose into the input. And I've taken a close-up of that. You can see I have one white, one black. I'm not too crazy about color matching. I just wanted to work. So once I went to Home Depot, they had a white. Next time they had a black. So that's how it turned out. So this one, when I have an inch of rain, in less than 20 minutes, this barrel is full. So what I did was hooked up. You don't see it here, but I have 4 barrels that have hooked up to this main supply barrel. So I have one barrel that's feeding 4 of these. And you can see here's a pipe. So essentially, on to the next picture. What you do is for each of these barrels, you put a Y splitter. Make sure you buy a Y splitter that has these shutoffs so you can shut off water. And I'll tell you why later. You can see here I have this daisy chain too. Now you get barrels like the one I talked about before, where the top has just a small opening. Actually, it only has this to begin with. This is the opening you make. And you have these kind of barrels, the last picture here, which the whole top can be opened, and there's a clamp that goes around it. The top can be flipped out. This makes it so much more easier to clean. So if you have a preference or if you have a choice, get these. Let's talk about how to use that water. So going back to this, it's rained. You have 4 barrels, and honestly at home right now, I have all my 4 barrels full because the rain earlier this week. So how do we use it? There is call it the hard way and the easy way. What I do is I have a hose that runs from the barrel that is actually under my water collection system, and there's a pipe or a hose that runs all the way to where I actually need to use it. Now, one tip here, which initially drove me crazy, because I would open up the spigot here, I would open up the valve here, wait for 5 minutes. On that end here, the bucket, there's no water. I'm like, something wrong? Is the Y splitter broken? No. Remember, you're using gravity, and maybe this is about 1.5 feet, as the bucket is maybe 1.5 feet. To get the water flowing, first put it on the floor, let water run. That will build up momentum. Then drop it into your bucket. Fill your bucket, use either a smaller bucket or a mug to distribute the water. The other way to use it too is you can buy a pump, it costs about $100. Hook it up to your barrel system here, and especially if you have 4 of them daisy chained, then you have what, 16 to 4, do the math, 240 gallons that you can pump through this pump here. You can put actually a hose and a sprayer at the end, turn the pump on and use it. To start with, I used it and then the pump died and I just didn't get around to fixing it. Or you can also hook up this hose to a soaker hose system. Again, looking at the last picture here, you can see we have some soaker hose systems. The one warning here, and I've learned this the hard way, I would turn it on, say, hey, I'll come back in 15 minutes, go inside, forget about it, get involved with something else. 2 days later, all my barrels are empty. So put a timer. You can buy commercial mechanical timers, set it for an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, whatever it is. That way it cuts it off even if you forget. And rainwater is precious. For me, when I lose rainwater, it's more painful than me losing my wallet. So some tips here, really quick, kind of summarizing the things we talked through here. Make sure that you put it on a strong base, structurally strong. When I don't know the actual weight, but 60 gallons of water is pretty heavy. If it tips over when you're around, you'll be in a hospital. Or if you have some furniture or some like pool equipment next to it and it tips, it's going to break it. So make sure it's in a safe place. Walk around a house, find a downspout that has the greatest discharge of water when it rains, and try to put your barrel underneath it. When you're building the support, you can use either blocks of cement or you can use lumber. But if you use lumber, make sure it's treated. And the reason is there's going to be water. It's not treated, wood's going to rot, it's going to weaken, it's going to collapse. So use treated wood. You will have access to this slides later on, so I'm not going to walk through everything here quickly. Then aesthetics, how important is that to you? You saw from my earlier pictures, not important to me. But if you want to be green, yet you want your house to look nice, there are many ways to do that. And the later slides will capture that. The last tip about using it, just common sense, keep the barrel as close to the plants that need the water. Use gravity to fill your buckets, or you can use a pump. Then if you have multiple daisy chained, you start with, remember I said you use the Y splitter with cutoffs so you can stop the water. So when I fill my barrels up, the first barrel I use is the one that's right under the downspout. Why? Let me say I finish it and it rains within that week. It fills up the fastest. So better to empty that. And then almost like a train switching system, you shut off that barrel, you close the spigot there, you open the Y cutoffs for the next barrel, you use it. So you walk down the chain. And again, common sense, if you're using multiple barrels, make sure they're the right level. All of them are the same level. Otherwise, you know the saying, water finds its own level. So if you have one higher than the rest, that's going to empty off and leak, probably because of the overflows. All right, just like anything else around your house, barrels need to be cleaned. I cleaned once a year. That's what I read online is the recommended cleaning frequency. So beginning of the season, after winter, typically your barrels are empty because you've used all the water, it's not rain, it's winter. So remove your barrels, and this is the barrel I have. So you can see that I use a mop, and the first picture shows you how mucky it is. So put in a mop, run it around.
Hi.
Hello. All right, folks. Okay, so continue on. Yeah, so use a mop to clean the inside. Use a hose to wash a couple of times. Turn it upside down, and you should be good to go. The one thing I want to highlight is when you build this, if you're building it yourself, these are all PVC parts you can buy at a home improvement store. I mean, these are all used in plumbing. Make sure you put a mesh wherever there is an outlet so that you prevent mosquitoes from getting in. If you're sat outside in the yard recently, there'll be a pleasant reminder that maybe you didn't put the mesh on, so make sure you put them on. one tip I learned during the preparation of this slide, which I actually haven't implemented and plan to do, is they say use a footy on the downspout to catch leaves. Remember there's trees around you, there's leaves. Otherwise, they will accumulate on this filter. And what happens when you have too many leaves here, water doesn't flow. So most of the rainwater is just going to overflow and not get into your barrel. So putting one of those footsies there, a pantyhose, you keep the leaves up and let your water flow. All right, moving on to the next one. So this is a quick video on how I clean my barrel. So enjoy the show. Need a hose, need a mop, and the camera can focus on the inside. You can see it's pretty messed up. There's a lot of green in there. That's what we look like. So what I do is I use the hose first. I'll wash inside as much as we can, and wash the outside. The camera can come a bit closer. You see that the barrel top also has outlet holes. These often get clogged, so you need something like this to clear it out if it's clogged. Here's some videos. You can spray inside, and then you use a mop like this to mop it. Now it's a little bit of a challenge, so I just demonstrate what I do. So make sure you have the mop as tight as you can. Pull it around. Tie it in, and essentially go around cleaning the water. That's where most of your sediment and mud is.
So is there a little bit of water inside?
There is, obviously, because the gap is about an inch above the base, so most barrels will already have some sediment. So use that at the bottom and then use the same mop.
Use the sides.
Then what you do is, since you really can't get to this side, stand it up. This is going to pop it on the side, and I can push like it's a reach it a little bit. See, the angle will change because of the
Try to get out as much algae.
All right, so that was a demo there. A couple of comments there. If you paid attention, you have seen that at the top there is an overflow spout. Make sure that you put a screen around that too if you're making it yourself. When you buy it commercially, there typically is a screen, but over time, because of all kind of reasons, weather, algae, those tend to tear or come off. It's easy to buy kind of a screen mesh. Use some water glue. You can buy those glue at Home Depot for about $4. They use it in boats and glue it back on. This part that you see on the screen is really important to keep mosquitoes away. You can buy something called mosquito bits or dunks. Essentially, if you're looking at the powder, the granules that you see on the right side, you need maybe half a spoon to a quarter spoon per barrel, because it's dosed based on the surface area, because mosquitoes are on the top, they don't go really swimming down there. So quarter spoon each barrel is, and if you buy a bottle like that, it'll probably last you 6-7 years with the 5-6 barrels that you have. Also, when you collect water, make sure that after you are done for the day or watering your plants, if there's water in the bucket, put a lid on it. Keeps mosquitoes away. And this particular barrel, you see it's dressed up. It's got a nice fancy coat on. Why? If anybody knows the answer, type that in your chat box, and I will answer that myself in about a minute. If I forget, I'm sure my dear wife will remind me. So where do you buy these barrels? What I'm going to do is, if you want to buy commercial ones, you can buy it in a lot of places. The best place to buy is from your city. Every year around May, city of Plano, I confirm that city of Frisco does this. They have an annual workshop where you can go and you can see how barrels are put together, and then you can buy a commercial barrel. This one that you're seeing, the Ivy rain barrel, it's about $70. Comes with a whole kit, things to hook up to your downspout, the overflow, everything. I mean, the commercial, this one, if you go today and look at it, it's about $118 and it's out of stock because everybody's used up. So that's a good way to do it, and do it every year, add to your barrels. My advice is start with one. Maybe 6 months later, add more. How much time do we have, Chino? Okay, all right. So I went to Whole Foods recently because I remember seeing they sold barrels and they have stock even today. It's priced at $100. It's kind of simple. I really like the Ivy ones. You can buy it at Home Depot. The one here is from Home Depot too. It's $88. They will deliver it to a store for free, and you can just pick it up from the store. So a lot of options. You could see these are the commercials one that are prettier or much better than the one that you can buy from somebody who's putting it together in the garage. Nothing against one or the other. It's a personal preference. And when you actually, if you download this slide later, you can click on this link here. It's actually an install video. Do we have time? Okay, all right. So let's go and watch the video. I might pause it in between if we start running off. Hang on.
This video, step by step, is the Ivy installation process. Before getting started, you will need a few tools. Everything else to assemble your Ivy comes included.
Sorry guys, give me a second to get this to stream. Starting over again. Would you mind going to your laptop and seeing if it's playing?
This video, step by step, is the Ivy installation process. Before getting started, you will need a few tools. Everything else to assemble your Ivy comes included in the bottom of your barrel. When you receive your barrel, please check that your kit is there. Be sure to read all the instructions before beginning. The kit includes an overflow hose clamp, releasable zip ties, a cap, a ball valve, and a rubber gasket. The screen and screen ring come pre-assembled from our factory. It is designed so you can replace the screen if it ever gets damaged. If your ring is too tight, placing the lid in the slim will help soften the plastic. Place the rubber gasket in the threaded port where the ball valve goes. It does not have to rest all the way in the back of the port. The ball valve has two different thread patterns. When installed correctly, the lever will point away from the barrel. Hand tighten as far as you can go. Do not over-tighten, as this may damage the threads. It is okay if the valve is not in the exact 12 o'clock position when fully seated. The cap, friction fits over the port and diverts the water to the overflow hose. The cap can go on either port of the barrel. Use the releasable zip ties to secure the lid to the barrel. Slide the hose clamps over the overflow hose and place them on the port. Use a screwdriver to tighten the hose clamp. Make sure it is tight enough by giving the overflow hose a gentle tug. Then use the releasable zip ties to secure the lid to the barrel. Select a downspout location that gives you convenient access near your plants that need water the most. Make sure the ground is level and stable. Ivy will weigh over 400 pounds in bulk. You can use gravel if the ground is too soft. Before installing, examine your downspout to see if it runs into a drain pipe. If so, measure your downspout and buy the correct size and color elbow from home improvement store. You may also want to pick up a pack of gutter screws. Ensure the base is wider than the bottom diameter of Ivy, which is 18 inches. We are using 12 by 12 inch blocks. They're inexpensive, strong, and look great. You will want to make your base at least 4 to 6 inches tall to make accessing your water easier. Pots can be purchased at your local home improvement store. There are lots of options available to you. Now, remove the bottom elbow of your downspout. Most times they are secured with 1 or 2 screws. You will want to save all parts. If you live in a cold climate and have heated downspouts, stop here and call a professional gutter installer. Place ivy on the level blocks to measure where to cut the downspout. Hold the elbow up, leaving room between the bottom of the elbow and the lid of the rain barrel. Make a mark about 2 inches from the top of the elbow. Now, it's time for safety glasses and gloves. Place scratch cardboard behind the gutter to protect your home. Cutting the downspout will be the trickiest part of the install, but don't be intimidated. Hold the gutter firmly and begin cutting. It will be loud, but take your time. Use your needle nose pliers to crimp the 4 corners, and the elbow will slide onto the downpipe. Then secure the elbow with the gutter screws. If you did not complete your base before, do so now. Then place ivy back up on the blocks. Be sure that overflow is directed away from your home's foundation. If you're going to run into a drainage pipe, you may want to take the overflow hose to drainage pit. We use some extra string around the pipe to keep out pests. You may attach a hose to the ball valve. Remember that ivy is gravity fed, so you will not get any water pressure if the hose is above the water level. You are now ready to start collecting and reusing your rainwater.
All right, give me a minute to flip back to my slide.
Guys,
Okay, that's YouTube. Yeah, getting there. Is it visible now, Chino?
Yes.
All right, thank you. All right, hang on. Yeah, okay, get it. Hang on, I showed the wrong one. All right, so continuing on, we are back here. Again, as a reminder, here's the install video, pretty useful, especially if you're really new at it. So I wanted to show you a couple of other things you can do with rain barrels. Where do you get them? So you really don't care for a really good one that's 80, 90, 120 bucks. Like me, you want to be practical and maybe start with something as an experiment. And especially now during quarantine, this is a nice project. And that's why I have some of these pictures here with your kids. So this is from Facebook Marketplace just a couple of days ago. These both said they were foot barrels, and I put the 2 kinds, the one that has a narrow opening that you need to cut into and make a bigger hole to collect the water, or there are these bigger open types with the clamp, which is what I prefer if I were to buy one. Makes cleaning much easier. Regardless, if these are just barrels, they don't have the input, they don't have the taps at the bottom, they don't have the overflow. You can literally buy all those at a Home Depot or a Lowe's or any other home improvement store. And if you're interested in going down this path and need more details on what exactly you need, drop us an email and I can send you that list with kind of the part numbers and such. Even we're trying to beautify your downspout. So just cutting it in the middle, you can buy something like this, which essentially will fit to both sections of your downspout. So it continues down to the ground, looks clean and nice. But this one is a diverter that will then fill your barrel. So it makes it much better looking. And with something like this, if you want to collect water from the front of your house that's facing the street, you can put this and then just use a hose to take it to your barrel that's maybe behind a fence. Make use of that. Make it a home project with your kids, make it colorful, paint it. Now, a few minutes ago, I said, hey, I'm going to tell you later on why one of my barrels had that coat on. It's not for so much for aesthetics. It is important that the barrel have a dark color on the outside. Yes, mine is blue. I've been lazy. I should have painted it black or some other color or brown. What that does is prevent sunlight or minimize the sunlight getting into the barrel, and more sunlight, guess what? More algae, more green in the water. So if you paint it, it's creative. You can spend time with your kids doing this. I mean, look at this one with the pot and flowers. It looks really nice. But of course, lighter colors is not going to help with algae here, so you can put a dark background and paint on it. So do that this summer. I think that was my last slide from what I know. We will open it up for question and answers. So you can either unmute yourself. Go ahead and unmute yourself. And Marty, are there any questions in the chat? Yeah. Okay, we have no messages in the chat. So unmute yourself. Any questions, please feel free to start talking.
So I have a question for this. What have you seen have been the biggest challenges for people to start off with rainwater harvesting? Is it
Okay,
just
so
limited knowledge?
I think that it's very, if you don't know much about it, it's very intimidating thinking, how am I going to manage this? How am I going to do it? Where am I going to get the rain barrel? How do you hook up? Hopefully, having watched through this, you can see it's not complicated. When I was first, Marty suggested this idea, I'm like, why? I mean, it's so simple. Why would I need a class? But that's because I've been doing it. Yeah, so what I'm going to do is, just because of background noise, I'm going to mute everyone, and anybody who wants to speak up, unmute yourself.
I think there's a question in the chat.
Okay, thank you. All right, so I had one. So the question here, in case you're not seeing, is I had one a few years ago, but we didn't have the overflow set up. It made a mess without an overflow. Yes, that's definitely a problem, but something that's not difficult to remedy if you are into it. And I mean, after this, you get drill bits that are actually circular. You just hook it up to your drill. It's got the bit itself is circular, so it will knock out a circular hole, and that's in fact what you will use to make the holes on top and on the sides, or even for the tap. So once you do that, you can use regular PVC plumbing, put a screen or put a hose to it and lead it away from your wall, from your foundation, and that will solve that problem. Anyone else? Yeah, and if you are speaking and I can't hear you, that's because you're still muted, so be sure to unmute yourself.
Is there anybody from the city who will come and install it for you?
No, there's no one from the city who will install it for you, but I mean, it's something that you can reach out to a handyman that you know. In fact, I'm trying to source places where it's easy to get it. I've reached out to a couple of people I have used before. There's somebody who's what we call Rainwater guys in Plano, Dallas. I reached out to the city. You can just use a handyman. You can see from this, it's pretty straightforward. Again, feel free to share this deck with them or walk through this. They will install it. The city will not. This does not need a permit. This does not need an inspection. Just make sure that you put it safe. Yes, I mean, they do sell ready-made rainwater barrels, as we saw at Whole Foods and other places. And like I said, the city sells it once a year. I reached out to the city earlier this week and they said they were done for this year. We had to wait till next year. So HOA, that depends on. Okay, so the question I have here is, hi, do we need to take HOA permission before we install the barrels? That is very specific to your HOA. In my case, our HOA is defunct. They went bankrupt for the last 8-10 years, so I didn't have anybody to ask, so I just went ahead and installed it. In most cases, I would suspect, again, I don't know how HOAs operate or each one's bylaws. If it's in a backyard and not visible, I think they should be okay. But check with the HOA, just write to them and say, hey, we'd like to do this. Keep them coming, and then in a few minutes, say in about 7 minutes, I'll be turning over this session to Malati. If there are no questions, then take a break. Feel free to step away, and we will come back at 10:45. Get your coffee. And if there are any questions, keep posting. Even if it's after Malati's session, I'll be happy to answer them. So for the next about 5 minutes, we'll mute yourselves here, and we will be back.
Thank you so much, Andrew. That was great.
You're welcome. Thank you. Thank you, Krishna. I appreciate it.
Hi, everyone. This is Malati. I live in Plano, Texas, along with my husband, Chandru. I'm a gardener. I guess I got into gardening about 18 years ago. I'm an IT person turned food blogger. I have a blog called Healthy Indian. That's my logo at the bottom there. I also teach yoga. I volunteer. I travel the world, at least pre-COVID, amongst wearing other hats. Plano, Texas is Zone A/Zone B, depending on where you are. So, to composting. I attended a composting seminar several years ago, conducted by the city of Plano. And honestly, I was very intimidated by the math and the science that was involved. We had to go through several rooms of displayed compost. Then we had to take a little quiz on how much of carbon, how much of nitrogen, what constitutes carbon, what constitutes nitrogen. And I was just scared out of my wits. So I said, forget it. I'm not going to compost. And so life went on. What happened? We would generate garbage after garbage every week because I cook. I'm a food blogger. And so I'm generating a lot of vegetable waste. And I grow a lot of vegetables. So I had a lot of waste coming from my yard as well. And it all was landing up in the garbage. Then one day, came across a friend who was gifted with a compost bin by her husband. What a lovely birthday gift. So she started composting. And then about 6 months later, I started watching Rebecca compost. And then on a whim, I took the plunge and attended another City of Plano event. And that's where we got our compost bin. So after that, there has been no looking back. We've been composting now for over 5 years. And guess what? Our garbage went from 8 grocery bags a month filled with plastic and organic material to literally 1 grocery bag of non-recyclable trash a month. And this is for a family of 2. So you can do the math and see how advantageous this would be if you were to compost for a family of 4. So that being the background, moving on to the next slide. So why compost? So I guess all of you are here because either you're gardeners or you go outside into your yard and you see either how bad the soil is. If you live in Texas, especially North Texas, the soil is clayey. Literally nothing grows. Nothing grows that is not native to this part of the world. Yes, trees will grow. We have lovely pecan trees, oak trees, but try growing vegetables in this earth and nada. You'll have nothing here. So that is where a good compost comes into the picture. Compost will enhance your soil. It will encourage the airflow. It retains water better. It encourages bacteria to grow, which is essential for maintaining the pH levels. So, and nutrients. The nutrients that come from compost is what plants need to achieve larger harvests. And earthworms. I know I used to feel the U factor when I saw worms, but now I know. I encourage earthworms. When I see an earthworm struggling, which has come out of my garden bed, I very gently take it and throw it back into my garden bed, because as a gardener, I know how important earthworms are to till the soil. It also prevents erosion when used as a mulch, and of course, saving on landfill space. Look at the garbage. Next time you throw something into your garbage, look at it and think for yourself, could this have gone into my compost bin? And maybe that will encourage you to start composting. And it's easy, guys. If you read up, it's very scary. So I'm here to tell you that I like to keep my life simple, and it's one of the simplest things that you can do for yourself, for your garden, and for the planet. So welcome to composting. So history of compost. The history is probably even before humankind even came. What happened, right? Long before people even inhabited this planet. Composting was something that just happened in nature, right? In every swamp, every forest, every meadow, wherever there was vegetation, composting was going on. Then sometime probably in the distant past, probably our ancestors noticed that crops were growing better near piles of rotting manure or vegetation. So then the discovery was passed on to the succeeding generations. And so now composting is just a natural process, something that our ancestors learned to use. And this is my mother, and I happened to video her. This was about 3 years ago. She was 84, going on 85 at that time. She's going to turn 88, I believe, this year. My sister is on this Zoom call. So I'm going to just turn on this video. This is something that she used to do every single day. Just watch what she does. Look at her squatting at this age. It's pretty amazing. So she just takes her vegetable waste for the day. She goes into her little backyard. Not that there's not much of space, but she just digs a little hole and then pushes the soil over it. And she lives in Bangalore. And then she tells me that this turns into rich compost in Bangalore, India's weather, in about 3 weeks. So that's all simple. And she'll reuse that plastic cover and so on. And her garden, she's got a lovely little garden. It's just amazing that she does this. And I guess she has been a role model for me, which is where my background has come in handy to do sustainable practices in my own life. So moving on. So we know why we're going to compost. Why do we need to do it at home? There's several reasons. And I'll give you a little story. So a few years back, California asked the city of Los Angeles to reduce its landfill. So they said, okay, what do we do? So they said, let's compost. Let's take all the waste from the residents, compost it, and sell it back to the residents. Win-win, right? Nope, that was not the case. Slowly, they started getting reports. Farmers started saying that they're losing crops. People started saying that they're losing their flowers. Then there was an investigation, and then they realized that there was this compost which the city of LA was selling back to its residents had a dandelion herbicide. It's called chlorophyllide, and it was killing crops and commercial flowers. Suddenly, these programs in several parts of Washington and Los Angeles and other parts of the country came to a grinding halt as the quote unquote contaminated compost scandal started to spread. So, be careful. Go to a reliable source when you buy your compost. I know I'll tell you upfront that I cannot make enough compost for my own garden. We are a family of 2. We eat a lot of fruits and veggies. Even so, I cannot produce. We're forced to go out and we are forced to buy compost. So be careful, buy organic compost only and be very careful. So why not just go and buy the cheapest compost available? Herbicides, pesticides, microplastics, heavy metals, pathogens, toxins. And guess what? The US government is perfectly okay with composters adding sewage and sludge. And you know where that's coming from, right? That's feces, either human feces or animal feces. So think about it. Oil and automotive waste also get into these composts. Several times, the acid-alkaline balance is not there. Why? Because compost needs to cook. Compost needs to get to a point where it is soil ready, plant ready. Sometimes commercial composters are in a hurry to get this to market. So they will take shortcuts. So these are some of the things that you have to watch out for. Instead, why not make some of your own compost? And that's where my talk comes in. So 3 elements for making the perfect compost. Number 1, you need a container, right? Otherwise, you can dig into the ground like my mother did and put little scraps in there and close. But then you have to remember where you had dug and kind of space it out. But who knows? Rodents might come, they might start digging in. You don't want a rodent problem. But you can have a stationary bin, and depending on where you live, if you have a lot of land available, you can create bins like this. You can just dump your garbage, your food waste into it, and just allow nature to take the heroine's role in this and turn your vegetable waste into compost. Or you could also have a commercial bin. This is a stationary bin, and you can start dumping your food waste into it. There is one caveat with stationary bins. You have to turn these wastes regularly. So you have to, every few days, you have to take a rake and you have to turn it. Kind of a royal pain. So we go on to the next option, rotating bins. We love convenience, don't we? I live in a suburban home right in the middle of Plano. I don't have much yard space and I need something where I don't have to worry about rats getting into my food, getting into my compost bin. So these are wonderfully designed BPA-free compost bins that you can purchase. They are some of them, like you see this one on the left, low to the ground. This is a single bin. This has a handle. You can just rotate it. And this is a double bin. So you can start your compost on one side and allow the other side to cook once it's free. So these rotate by themselves. You don't have to use a rake to work the raw materials in. And this is my preferred way of doing it. So the next element to get a perfect compost, this is where the little bit of science comes in. So we need 3 things to make a compost work. One is carbon, the next is nitrogen, and the third is water. So you need to have a mix of these 3 things. And don't worry about this. You don't have to memorize what is brown, what is green, but here are some things that will tell you what are some of the brown objects. What are browns? Browns are anything that is dry or woody plant material. So in most cases, these materials were brown originally, or they turned naturally brown. And why do we need carbon? Why do we need these browns? These browns are carbohydrate-rich materials. And the main job of a brown in a compost is to work with the microbes to break down the contents of your compost pile. These browns will help by adding bulk, and they will allow airflow through the pile. So you need oxygen to get the composting process going. So remember, leaves, they're loose. So once you put leaves into a compost, just think about it. They create this beautiful oxygen flow inside the compost. Same thing with straws, same thing with hay. I've got some asterisks here. Twigs, chipped barks, definitely not for a suburban garden. Corn stalks, if you can break the corn stalks into small pieces, then it's okay. Otherwise, definitely not. So this is brown. And I'll answer some of your questions. Now, next is the nitrogen. Nitrogen is needed for, again, to bring that nice balance into your compost mix. So greens are what are rich in nitrogen. They're rich in nitrogen and they're also rich in protein. So these are wet and recently growing materials, and they come from plants that were green at some point. So glass clippings, they were green at some point. Coffee grounds, the plants were green at some point, right? Vegetables, fruits, they were all green. Eggshells, exception. Seaweed, also green. And again, if you are using composting in a suburban garden, I strongly suggest that you do not use animal manures. Keep that out. Everything else is kosher. I don't have access to seaweed, but if you have access to it, then do use it. It is very, very rich in nitrogen. So let's move on. And the third is water. I have not really specified water here, but water is needed to keep the mix. So if you find that your compost is very dry, then you would add a little water, especially in Plano where the summers are blazing hot. Depending on where you keep your compost bin, materials tend to dry. Or sometimes I cook a lot on Sundays, then I dump everything into the compost. And then for 3 or 4 days, I'm not cooking, and probably I don't have enough vegetable matter to go into the compost. It might get dry because I might be putting leaves. I may not be putting enough green matter. So I'm putting a lot of browns. I'm not putting enough greens. That is when water will help to mix everything. The third item is location. Location of your compost bin is important. I like my compost bin to be unobtrusive. So if I have guests in my backyard, I don't want my compost bin to be really staring at my face. That said, you need to have your compost bin in the sunniest location that you can find, given your limitations. So I have put my bin where I have my pool equipment. It receives about 6 to 7 hours of sunlight. I wish it could receive 10 hours of sunlight. It would be great, but then I don't have enough sunlight. So I'm just working with what I have. So the pictures here were taken yesterday. This is my compost. I have ground coffee here. I have some celery stalks. I made a green smoothie. These are jackfruit seed covers. I made a sambar, lentil soup with jackfruit seeds. So I have that. And then to that, I made something with onions. So those are my homegrown onion peels. Avocado. So we had a guacamole last night. So that's avocado. This is my curry leaf stock. And these are my green chilies, homegrown green chilies. I cut off the tops. I also had eggshells. Last night, my dog Chutney ate an egg. I guess I took this picture before that. The next chore you need to do, and you can't get away from this, is to rotate your compost bin. So here's what I do. I have a little box like this. You can go really fancy. If you go onto the internet, you will see a lot of fancy composting kitchen bins that you can buy. I have used a plastic box. Probably someone gave me something for a takeout or something. I have this box. I use this box from morning to evening. I put stuff that I, use in my kitchen. I dump it into this. Every night I will go and dump this into the compost, and then I rotate the compost bin. Why do I need to rotate it? Because I need to get air into it, and I need to make sure that the old mix is getting thoroughly mixed with the new material. It's very essential to do that. The third is test. So every time I open the compost bin to throw in my vegetable waste, I also look inside to see if the material is too dry or too wet. If it is too wet, I have some brown paper that I have shredded. We get now with COVID times, we are getting a lot of packaging material. So what do? We run that packaging material through our shredder, and I keep a whole bunch of brown paper shreds in my bag. So I will go and throw some brown paper into it. If it is too dry, most of the times now I notice that it is extremely dry because of our hot weather. I just take a bowl of water and I just slosh it into my compost, turn it, and leave it alone. Now, how long does it take for these things to cook? We'll come back to that. So, what to add and what not to add? You can literally add anything that you're using in your kitchen. The exceptions are dairy, meat, fish, bones, fatty food, oil, and grease. So these are things that cannot go into your regular compost. Those of you that want to compost your meat and your bones, there is a technique called bokashi composting. So you can contact me and I can give you some information about bokashi composting. You can compost that inside your home. I had thought wine corks were very compostable. So for a whole 6 months, I dropped my wine corks into my compost bin. And once my compost was cooked, when I took it out, number one, I was horrified to see how many wine bottles we had gone through, number one. And number two, none of those corks had composted. All fine French wines, Italian wines, nothing had composted. So I suggest that you don't use the corks. Avocado seeds, again, logic. Very difficult for the worms to eat these seeds. Anything that has disease, please don't put them in. Synthetic tea bags. A lot of our tea bags are made from synthetic material, so be very careful. Don't put the staple that is attached to your tea bag. Please remove it before you add it into your compost. Weeds, obviously, because why? You don't want weeds in your compost because when the compost is cooked, weeds are really tough. They will start sprouting in your compost. After you put the compost into your beds, they will start sprouting. So, no, a big no. Of course, no kitty litter there. Remember to remove the produce sticker. I had made the mistake of not removing the stickers. I did not realize that they were coated with some synthetic stuff. I thought it was just paper. I think it is glue. So they all did not compost. Very annoying. Any food cooked with oil, please do not compost. However, that said, a friend of mine made a lot of idlis. Idlis are puffed rice cakes, for those of you that don't know. And she did not like the way they turned out. So she asked me if I could compost it for her. And I actually threw it in my compost because there was no oil in it. It was just rice and lentils. And my worms loved it. After 3 weeks, I did not even see any idlis in my compost. So they like to eat it. Everything else that you see on the left side, fruit and vegetable peels, do not use citrus peels. If you are doing a home compost, the worms do not like citrus peels. So no lime, no lemon, no orange peels. Anything rotten, moldy, the worms love it. Avocado peel, the peel is very tough. So please cut it into small pieces. The smaller you cut your things, the easier it is for your worms to eat them. Remember, they have very tiny mouths. They will go through it. Even if you put a big melon rind, they will eat it, but it will take a long time for them to eat it. So if you want to help your compost to grow fast, then cut everything. Grass clippings, brown unbleached coffee filters only. So moving on. So when is your compost ready? And I have a few videos here that I'm going to play. I took this a couple of days back and I'll show you. So this is, so I pulled out a little bit of compost. So I have 2 bins. So I have pulled out compost from each of these bins. So you will see the first one on, I'm going to start from the left, and you will see a lot of worm activity in this. And you see how wet it is? This means that this compost is still in the process of happening, right? The cooking process is going on. And those of you that have a EU factor for worms, please be warned, turn away from your screens for the next 3 minutes, because this is, I love my worms now. If I had seen these 10 years ago, I would have totally freaked out. But now I handle them, and sorry, I even talk to them sometimes. So here goes. See these worms? They are crawling all over and they are disseminating my vegetable waste. See that? Lot of worms. And this is what the worms look like. They look like, I don't know, someone said they look like weevils. I don't know what they are called. I think they're called wrigglers. So at different times of the year, different worms come to visit. In the wintertime, these guys are gone. These little critters are gone. There are flying insects that come out. They do no harm. They have never bitten me. Like I said, I've been composting for 5 solid years. I have not paused composting even for a single day. Things fly out. They've never harmed me. My dog is outside all the time. None of us have been bitten. These guys come only in the summertime. So they eat, and that is, summer is when your compost is working really hard for you. So the faster you throw in compost in the summer, the more the results. So now look at this compost. This is from my second bin. You'll see very few insects in this. See that? There's just one bug, 1 or 2 bugs crawling around, or maybe 3, but very, very few of them. So you know that this compost is almost cooked. And now this is a picture on the extreme right, 0 worms. You see not a single worm. The compost is powdery. It doesn't look like the compost that you purchase from the store. Why? Because commercial compost is put through a screening process. So what they do is they have huge mesh screens and they pound the compost because it needs to look quote unquote beautiful, right? I have done no such thing. They put it through a screen and they sieve it. When they sieve it, then they sell it as 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch, or 1/4 millimeter, 1/2 millimeter. So the thicker it is, people use it as mulch. The thinner it is, then you can dig it in. This is home. This is the real deal, guys, right? So this is how my compost looks. I harvested this compost about a week back, and now I have, for my fall gardening, I'm getting ready for fall gardening. So I have started to work this compost into my veggie plants. And really, you need very little of your home compost. Unlike the commercial compost, you need very little of this to make healthy plants, tons of produce. So let's move on. So this is what, compost looks like. Okay, sorry. All right, when is compost ready? So when it smells like earth. Compost should not stink. Number 1 rule. If you have the carbon-nitrogen combo, again, what is this combo? It should not stink. It should not be too dry. It should not be too wet. If it is too dry, add water. If it is too dry, add vegetable waste. If it is too wet, add brown paper. If it is too wet, add grass clippings or cardboard or dry leaves. And when you look at it, you should not see any worms consuming the waste, as I showed you in the picture that was on the extreme right. It should be crumbly, and you should not see any food items in your compost. I will give you one small exception though. Eggshells. You will still see eggshells in your compost. No matter how small you crush them, unless you put them into a coffee blender before composting it, you will see eggshells, and that's perfectly okay. What I do is I use the eggs, I just let it out to dry for half an hour till it becomes a little crummy. I just crush it with my hands, and I will add it to my compost. So when I harvest this compost, I will see eggshells, but I will not see my watermelon, I will not see my curry patta, I won't see any of those things. It should look like dark soil. This is how our compost looks like. Very different from commercial compost, but much better, much healthier in my opinion. Harvesting compost. How do you harvest your compost? When you see no worm activity, everything looks crumbly, everything looks dry, it smells beautifully earthy, you can just tilt your compost or shovel it out of your bin and then use it as is, as mulch. Otherwise, you can take portions of this, work it into your soil, add some commercial compost if you need to, if you have to supplement, because I don't think any of us can produce enough compost to satisfy our needs. And just before planting, work it into your garden, and voila, you will get really beautiful produce, I guarantee it. Combined with rainwater that you have harvested, combined with the compost that you use, your garden will look lusher than ever before. So why? We need sunshine, which we have abundance of. We need the water. Better to use your own rainwater, nature provided, and use your own compost. Again, nature provided. Doesn't take too long. So if you are in the DFW area, local source for organic compost is Texas Pure. They are a few miles from where I live. They have commercial operation. They gather compost waste from several cities around here. I believe Allen, Frisco are also participating cities, and they produce organic compost, and I love their compost. So if you are in the DFW area, also carbon footprint, these bags are heavy, so the less miles they travel, the better it is for the planet. Texas Pure also does bulk delivery. So if you call them, they will come in their truck, and they will, I think it's by cubic yard. It's much cheaper if you buy it in bulk. If you don't buy it, if you don't want bulk, they also supply it in bags. Sources and ideas for compost bins, Amazon, of course. Pinterest will give you some ideas on how to blend a compost bin into your landscape. There are several landscaping ideas. There are several landscapers who will paint your compost bin, just like rain barrels. You can also paint your compost bins to make them look pretty. Wayfair.com is another up and coming site. I have seen some very reasonably priced compost bins on their website also. So what do I have before I end this? I have 2 compost bins. One is a single compost bin, and both are by this company called Yimly, Y-I-M-B-L-Y. There are many of them there. I don't know why I got Yimly. The first one was a Yimly, and so the second one was also a Yimly. The first one was a single compartment. I love it. It's got holes to allow rainwater to come in, but it also allows excess water to drain, and I love it. But what happens if you have only a single bin compost? What happens? You cannot stop adding things. So when does it cook? Never. So what I did was I ended up getting a second compost bin. Now the second compost bin has 2 compartments, just like I showed you in one of the pictures before. So I can start adding raw material to one side of the compost. Once it's full, I close that and I start adding raw material to the other compost. So it starts cooking. But a couple of reasons why I don't like it all that much, because it is hard to shovel things out, because when I tilt that compost, everything falls off, even from the side. So pick and choose, look at reviews online to see what works for you. Contact me and I'll give you some more ideas. So I'm going to open this up for Q&A. Before that, I'm going to just show you a video of my garden. I'm going to do a very quick PowerPoint slide of, where is it? Okay. All right. So I'm being told that I won't have time to show a lot of questions. Okay. So let's go to the chat window and I'll start with the chat and then you can unmute yourself and let's ask. Okay. All right. So where do we start? Wonderful session. Okay. Can't see you. Does this? I know my sister Meera says my mom does this even today. Yeah. How funny, how nice. Do you have to be careful with some of the grass that's combined with the weeds? Yes, like I said, don't add weeds to your compost. I personally don't add weeds to my compost because grass clippings also I try to avoid because of hidden seeds in the grass clippings. You can use grass clippings if you have an outside large compost, then it really doesn't matter. It will cook. In the open sun, if you are in a farm, you own a farm, you can do that. Or if you are in one of these 2 or 3 1-acre plots, Shobha Michaels, you can do that. Not in our small yards. Yes, weed is a lot of carbon. So again, be careful of carbon, nitrogen. Like I said, the smell will tell you. If it is giving you a putrid smell, then you have to add a little more brown to it. Shredded brown cardboard is something that I add, or brown paper. Does the compost bin smell bad? No, a good compost will never smell. It has an earthy smell. Now that can be nasty for some people, but for me, it is like black gold, guys. I call this, it is called black gold. And there's a reason why people call it that. This is what nature thrives on. And a good compost should not smell. What's the alternative for carbon items when dry leaves are not available? I see mixed opinions using shredded black paper. I honestly have never used black paper, but like I said, right now, COVID times, I'm getting a lot of brown paper shopping bags, right? Paper shopping bags, takeaway bags of groceries or food items, food takeaway. A lot of restaurants are now giving you brown paper bags. Whole Foods always gives you brown paper bags. I run it through my shredder and I keep those brown things available. I honestly would not use. Yes, Amazon gives you corrugated boxes. Yep, remove the plastic, remove the tape, remove anything that looks synthetic and use it. It is better than putting it into recycle, because this is going to generate really rich soil for you. Sneha says no dairy. Some YouTube suggests using yogurt to promote microbes. Sneha, the worms will come, trust me. And I have never put dairy in. Like I said, Bokashi is the only place where you would compost your dairy, your meat, and your oils. And you don't add dairy will rot. You know, milk, if milk goes bad, you know how it smells? It stinks. So I do not use it. The internet has a plethora of opinions. So what I have talked about today is my experience from the last 5 years. Does that mean I know everything? Of course not. So again, try it. If you're worms, if you don't see worms, then you know, lesson learned, don't use yogurt. And in any case, why am I wasting my organic yogurt on my microbes? They have enough to eat, guys. I'm not going to waste my yogurt on them. So hopefully, Sneha, that answered your question. Shobha, I was under the impression that onions and citrus items cannot be added. Yes, do not add citrus items to your home compost, rotator compost. Onions, garlic skins, chilies, everything can be added. I've had great success with all of these things. Sonal says, any suggestions on speeding local Texan tree leaves compost process? I noticed there are probably Xerophyte can take long time to compost. It's a bit of a problem. Some of our magnolia leaves and stuff like that. I have a holly tree and I would never put them in my compost bin. Number one, the leaves are prickly. They poke my fingers. And second is they are really tough. So be careful on these leaves. I prefer brown paper. Yeah, let the city take your leaves. They have Texas Pure will take it and they will cook it for you. So do that. Santoshi says, what about avocado seeds? Any seeds like melon seeds, any small seeds that the worms can eat, do add it. Avocado seeds are huge. So that's the reason why I said don't add those seeds. But any other seeds, I'm thinking ridge gourd seeds.
One challenge with adding a whole bunch of seeds is when you start using the compost, you use it on a, say, bed that has beans, and suddenly you see all kind of things growing there. That's because those seeds are coming back to life. The first time we did that, like, is this a weed? Is this something? They ended up turning different kind of vegetables. So, I mean, once it grows, you can transplant those little guys and actually use them. So, use whatever seeds you want.
Yeah, if you use seeds, there are chances that you may get a volunteer plant to come up. We've had a lot of melons that have come up. We have a lot of these bitter gourds that have come up on their own, flowers that have come up on their own. And for me as a gardener, I welcome this diversity. But if you don't like it, then probably not a good idea to add seeds. Or if you see these seeds sprouting, just pull out the little plants. Sneha says, can you chop your peels, leaves, twigs to smaller bits? Yes, Sneha, if you have the time and patience. Twigs, I don't put twigs because I don't have the patience to break them. I put them in my city waste. Let Texas Pure deal with it. Peels, anything that's really thick, I will chop them. If I have watermelon, I will run it through my Vitamix once just to, chop it up to small pieces, or I'll cut them real small. Avocado peels especially, they need chopping. Nandini, can we use citrus peels and boiled eggshells? Eggshells, definitely, yes. They are very nutritious for your worms. Citrus peels, I would stay away from them. Those worms look like maggots, Bhaskar. Are they beneficial? Absolutely. These are the worms that I speak to every single day. They are the worms that are turning your food waste into this black gold. So yes, they are our friends. They are not maggots. Do you add starter compost or do you buy worms? I do neither. Nature does her job. The first day I bought my compost bin, it was looking sad and empty, and I put some things into it and I'm thinking, okay, how are the worms going to know that I have a compost bin? How do they know to come into my house? And guess what? In 3 days, I went there and the whole thing was infested with worms. They know, they'll come. Now I don't buy worms either. They'll come on their own. No starter compost either.
I would compare this to sourdough, which is a big trend these days. Sourdough, again, you can put things out there and collect sourdough from air, but you can buy the starter. So similar thing with the starter too.
So I would say you can throw in a handful of dirt into your compost if you want. Not necessary. Javeria, thank you for your compliment. Meera says in our apartment for composting, sawdust is added and segregated veggie waste. Does that sound right? Absolutely. Sawdust was a list on my list, Meera. So you guys are generating a lot of food waste. My sister lives in Bangalore and she is doing amazing work in her apartment complex. So she has done wonderful things with their garden, and so they do a lot of composting. Nandini, how much compost to use and how to store them? I store mine in anything that I harvest. I just store it in a big pot, and whenever I need it, I just shovel some of it into the earth. How much compost to use? Again, how bad is your soil? How much compost had you added before? Where you live? A lot of factors. If you live in Dallas, Texas, and I think you do, our soil is really clayey. So I would use 50% compost, 50% organic potting soil mix, dig it in, mix everything with the local soil. When you touch your soil, it shouldn't be clumpy, it shouldn't be clayey. It should just fall through your fingers. So that's how you know, because there needs to be air inside our earth. Krishna says, how do you ubiquitor? What is that? Is a good option. I'm sorry, Krishna, I have no idea what this kind of compost is. I may have to research this. Thank you, Shobha, for coming. Onion peels can be used. Yes, please use onion peels. Do we need to sieve the compost? No, I don't. Like I said, commercial guys do it. I don't. Thank you, Shobha. Thanks, Meera. Parameshwaran says, how about composting in winter? Should we continue? Yes, I continue year round, guys. I don't stop. In the last 5 years, I can't remember a single day when I threw my veggie waste into the trash. I cannot. I compost through the winter, and there'll be different kind of worms that will come in the winter time. The activity is not much though, so you have to be patient. The compost won't cook so fast in the winter time, but that's okay. You know, we have all the time in the world. So thanks, Neelima. How to compost in winter? Yeah, so like I said, 365 days of the year, I am composting. Okay, Krishna, this is a composting method that uses large pieces of rotting wood as a centerpiece of long-term humus building. So this is nature's way of doing, right? So in my little suburban yard, I don't have the space to do this. So, but if you have a large space, then this is exactly how nature does it. A tree falls down in a thunderstorm, and then she starts rotting, and then everything starts growing around her, and that's where the humus is coming, right? The humus is coming from the rotting wood. So yeah, if you have the space, please do it, and please invite me to come and enjoy it. Thank you, Bhaskar. Ritu, thank you for joining from Austin. Thanks for your time. Sona, thank you so much. Does Texas Pure collect leaves? Plano will collect them, Sneha. We have 10 to 12 bags every couple of months. Please give it to them. They will, surrounding cities also, please. Your city will collect your leaves. They'll take it to Texas Pure and they'll sell it back to us. But Texas Pure will make sure that it is organic. So they will separate it out. They will do whatever. And when it cooks in their high temperatures, all the chemicals are gone, I suppose. Can we add non-organic veggie scraps in the... Yeah, you can add non-organic. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, we try to do organic, but you know, some Indian vegetables that we buy from the Indian stores, they're not organic, but the worms will eat it, guys. So I hope I've encouraged a few of you to start composting. It is really not difficult. Trust me. Once you start, it's a mind barrier. That's all. How do we contact you? You came through the Zoom meet, and my email must be there. If it is not, go to my website healthyindian.com, and there's a contact page. You can contact me there. Otherwise, I will put my email in the chat here. The chat seems to have just disappeared. Okay, let me put that here. I'll send it out here. My address is malathyc@yahoo.com. Please contact either Chandru or myself, and I will give Chandru's address. And again, we want to save this planet. We want to save this earth in every small way that we can. So thank you so much for participating. And I hope we've shared some of our love for the earth and for nature with you guys. So thank you again. Again, I'm available. Chandru is available for any help that you need, guys. We can do another Zoom call if you're installing a rain barrel, if you're trying to install a compost. Please call us, please email us, and we'll get onto the phone call or a Zoom call with you guys, and we will lead you through this process anytime we are available.
Thank you again. This is Chandru here. I know a couple of you asked if we're going to make the presentation available. what we'll do is we'll put it on Google Drive or something and send you a link. Basically, we'll send it to everybody who registered today, and you're free to use it or not. But like Marty said, we are here for any questions you have.
Yeah.
Thank you again on a weekend spending time with us. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Malati. Thanks, Chandra.
Hey, thank you, Malati. Thanks, Chandra.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.